Welcome to this new webinar organized by the Global Supply Chain Council on digital procurement best practices in Asia. My name is Max Henry. I'm going to be your host today, and I will, just give you an overview of what we do and introduce the speakers, and then we can then get into a discussion towards the end of this event. First, I would like to remind all of you that, just a few things about the Global Supply Chain Council. We started back in 2002. We are now operating in 12 countries around Asia, and we represent a fairly large community of supply chain, logistic, and procurement professionals. We are also running a social network called chain.net, and if you have not registered yet, I recommend that you check it out. Some of the events and webinars that we are going to be organizing, we are currently working on a new webinar, a virtual workshop on AI in the supply chain, which will take place towards the end of this month. Another webinar on indirect procurement, which is coming up as well. And of course, we are organizing our in-person events in different cities across Asia with a supply chain planning forum organized next week in Shanghai, followed by 2 events coming up in Hong Kong towards the middle of May. I want to remind all the delegates that this is again an interactive discussion, and you can make use of the Q&A tab at any time during the event where you can ask a question. Make sure that you mention the name of the speaker so it's easier for the speaker to answer. Keep your question short and clear. And if you want, you can also rank the questions that you feel are the most important, so they will appear on top of the Q&A. Of course, we'll try to answer as many questions as we can towards the end of the webinar. After this event, you will get feedback evaluation from us. So, please give us your feeling about the event. And of course, you will receive a copy of the recording within the next 48 hours. Today, we're going to have 3 speakers, and each speaker will talk for about 12 to 13 minutes. And this is not the right order, so we'll get started with Arup Lala, who's joining us from Hong Kong, followed by Florian Gamper, and last speaker will be Ken Oy. Each of the speakers, again, will speak for about 12 to 13 minutes. If you have, again, any questions, keep those questions, and then we will, you can So, Arup, are you here? Can you unmute yourself and join us?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, it's all good. So let me load you and you can get started.
Okay, so let me go back to the beginning. Okay, hi guys, thank you so much for this opportunity to Max and GSCC, and welcome to the webinar. So my name is Dr. Arup Lala, most of my friends call me Lala. I'll just jump onto the agenda slide. To begin with, I'm going to run you through a short historical view of what has happened and why we are moving towards the digitization of this world. The roadmap as to what is the way forward for us immediately that we can see, and the journey as to how we should be evaluating ourselves before we take on this path. Now, I'll move on to the next slide, which is the historical timelines. Now, if you look at the top left-hand corner of your slide, you'll see that we have any organization or any function can be divided into 3 different tasks: executional, tactical, and strategic. So in the early 1980s, when the automation was being incorporated into most of the business organizations, they were targeting more on the executional tasks. So basically taking over the clerical roles that have been there within the organization. As you move towards the 1980s to 2000, that was an era wherein ERPs were more prevalent, and at the same time, it started looking at more supporting the tactical decisions that were required on your day-to-day activities. In the 2000s to 2015, that is the internet age, and people started having internal systems talking to external systems. So, this is the point wherein systems like source to pay became a necessity rather than a good to have. Now we are in the phase of 2015 and onwards. This is wherein you can see a lot of digitization, a lot of work or analytics coming into the phase of the tactical and the strategic phase of any organization. As I move on to the next slide, this is where I'm going to spend some time. Now, if you look at the x-axis, I've covered the management areas, but at the same time, I've also given a view of how structured, unstructured, and complex structured learning is happening within the automation and the digital world. Now, just remember one thing is that digitization is a path towards AI. Just to make clear that AI is definitely going to take over some of the functions. It's not the question of if, it's the question of when. So if you look at the base level, any organization would be looking at analytics. Now, analytics also has got different layers of analytics. So typically you have something at the base level or the descriptive analytics, which actually helps you understand what has happened so far. Now, there are quite a few tools in the industry wherein you have ClickView, Tableau, which quite a few organizations are currently using to have a real-time view of what has happened so far, and also to get a view of why it is happening. Now, as you move forward, you would definitely need a large amount of storage capacity or computing capacity as your data requirements increase. Now, your analytics is only as good as to the point of how much data you can store, two, as to where is the source of information coming in from. So that's wherein blockchain and cloud computing becomes important. Now, the next logo or an icon that you can see is of a robot trying to smile. It's basically on the area of RPA. Now, RPA in general terms stands for robotic process automation. So wherever there is a less risk areas, that's the first set of areas that can be automated, or some of the systems can mimic any of the human actions. Those will be taken over by the RPA systems. The next evolution that is happening and is quite prevalent is also the area of predictive analytics. If you see the predictive analytics area, I've placed it between the structured and unstructured learning, because structured learning is, in case of predictive analytics, would be wherein there are data scientists or computer geniuses who are prescribing the algorithm for systems to think and come up with a conclusion. When you let the systems learn on its own through a machine learning environment or natural language processing, then it becomes into an unstructured learning. As you move further from this area, you would have a second wave of cloud wherein your data storage is not only limited to what the organization is providing, but is also feeding in, or data is coming in from external sources. That's wherein I think, and this is purely my belief, that neural networks will start being a little more prevalent. Neural networks wherein it starts taking over the decision-making abilities that humans have been controlling so far. And as it goes further, it becomes into a more complex structured thinking or complex structured learning through cognitive intelligence. This actually frees a lot of the human mindset from the day-to-day activities and starts taking decision on its own. The important aspect here that comes across is how do we trust the system. Now, I'm just going to jump into the next slide, which is a journey slide as to what could be doing in terms of where they are. So it typically starts off with an assessment. And in the assessment, you basically get an output of understanding whether you are evaluating the right key performance indicators. Do you have areas that you need to automate? And what are the areas that you can innovate on? So this becomes your a roadmap for the organization's digitization path, which is then optimized in a way so that you can understand as to what is the efficiency of these new changes that an organization brings across. Once they are standardized, it goes back into the layer of assessment. So this is a path through. Now, one of the areas that Max had insisted that I cover is also to give a case example. I'll give you an example from one of my past avatars in a way. We were working for an airlines organization who wanted to manage the efficiency or the cost management of the spares that it had. Now, the basic challenge was that where does the organization keep their spares? What is the cost associated of moving the spares from one location to the other? And when should they order the spares? Now, specific to an airline organization, the cost of holding and moving a spares is it's a huge amount. So we took a small case and started understanding as to the number of spares that are required for just a business class seat assembly in this. And we figured that it's got more than 200 moving components into it and hence needed to be addressed specifically. So it's to understand from each of those manufacturers what is the failure rate, life expectancy, and the fatigue ratio for each of those components. And we could actually collaborate and figure out as to what is the time frame that one or two or three of those business class shares are going to fail at any point in time. So this becomes a very important aspect for the organizations to say that, okay, now we know that this particular aircraft which is flying to this location is going to have XYZ failures, and hence we need to stock those components. So it gave a better understanding on how do you procure your spares, how do you store your spares, and which location should you store your spares that your flights are then moving across the globe. Because anytime an aircraft is grounded or is in the hangar for even the smallest repairs, it's a loss of revenue for the organization. So this is one of the case examples on how analytics actually helps organizations to grow beyond their current visibility. And that's how your basic analysis is going to help. That's how your predictive analysis is going to help. And that's how it's going to feed into a better decision-making abilities for the organization. So this was a short snippet of what we have as a roadmap towards digitization and how it can take us forward. So I wanted to run a couple of polls before, and I can still request Max if he can run those two questions in the polls for me. One is that, is the organizations in your particular organizations, are you guys currently using or thinking about the analytical tools that or business intelligence tools that are prevailing in the market? And the second poll that I wanted you guys to request, wanted you guys to give me a feedback on is that how has your organization or department ever conducted an assessment based on the industry standard methodologies like CMM? I'm not sure if everybody knows about CMM, but CMM stands for Capability Maturity Model. It basically evaluates organizations on the predictability of their output and also the quality and basically reduce defect ratios and higher predictability of the output.
Arup, I'm not sure whether the poll is working. Have you seen anything on your screen?
I did see the first question that came across. I'm not able to see the second one.
No, it doesn't. I've got a problem now on the poll feature. So let's move on.
Which is fine. Which is fine.
Working well. Okay. All right. Thank you.
So that's all from. So that's all from my side. I just wanted to give everyone a view of what's happening and what the industry trends are all about. How analytics plays an important role. How predictive analytics is going to be a part and parcel of our daily lives, and how it's important to know where we are before we decide on any journey to move forward from where we are. That's all from my side. Thank you so much, guys.
Okay, thank you very much, Arup. Okay, you will come back again for the questions at the end of the event. And if people have this question, I'm getting also questions from different people that I'm going to be pushing into the Q&A, but we can have a look at it and take them as a group later on. So I would like to invite our next speaker, Florian Gamper, who is the General Manager for Asia Pacific for EBP Global, to join us. Florian, if you could unmute yourself and then join the discussion.
Yes, thanks, Max. Thanks for having me.
Florian?
Yes, hi, Max. Thank you for...
Okay, your slides are up.
Perfect.
Can you hear us, Florian?
Yeah. Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me clearly? Hello?
Hi, Florian.
Right.
Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you clearly. Same for you?
I'm not sure whether Florian can hear us. I'm going to try again. Hi, Florian.
I could
Yes,
hear
we
him
can
for
hear
a
you
brief.
now.
Yes. Oh, okay,
Okay,
perfect.
it's all good. Okay, it's working.
Great, let me.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Go ahead. It's all yours, Florian.
Okay, thank you. So hi, I'm a data scientist, and my colleague data scientist and myself have spent the last few years working on different AI-related initiatives. Today, I would like to share some of our research work that relates to procurement. Procurement is a quite large process which starts with understanding what the customers and what the market really needs, to selecting vendors, loading your factories, and ultimately obtaining the products that you want to get. Today, my focus will only be on understanding what the customers need and what is in demand in the market. I think all of this breaks down to one question. How do we use data available today to predict customers' demand next week, next month, next quarter, or even next year, so at different time horizons? The usual answer to this is to do forecasting, so to look at events that happened in the past, try to recognize patterns and apply those patterns to the future with the assumption that what happened in the past is also to apply in the future. But a major downside with forecasting is that it only works if the conditions in the past are the same or at least very similar in future. And the further you go out, especially if you go toward a quarter or a year time, the least accurate this assumption would be. So this raises the question: are forecasts useful at all? And there I would say yes, if it's done for a stable market, like say North America, or at a quite high level, product group level, for example, for carryover products, so products for which you have quite some data from the past. But what do you do if you want to forecast for an emerging market like China? At a style level, even style color level, and for new products for which you don't have any history. So in this case, your forecast will be much less stable. It will more look like the lower line here. And every time you get new information in, then your forecast will likely look very different. So because this will be so unreliable, we were thinking, isn't there a better way to make use of or try to predict what will happen than doing forecasting? So we came up with this alternative, which is to exploit the properties of a current an ongoing trend. A trend has a simple definition. It has every trend is the same. It has a phase in, so a certain moment in time when the trend starts, then it will grow, and at a certain point it reaches maturity, and then it will slowly phase out. What is unknown is the duration and the impact of the trend. So we don't know how long it would take and how strong this trend is going to be. So here, maybe let me suggest to you to try to focus on two questions and answer those very precisely. The first one is, when did this trend start? What exact event made this trend start? For example, it can be a famous actor who started wearing a certain type of shirt, and then everyone wants to wear this same shirt. And what defines the trend? So what exactly makes this shirt being so special? Like, does it have a special color? Does it have a pocket at a certain location? And if you can answer those two questions very precisely, then you might exploit the trend, so take benefit out of it, especially if you recognize that there is a trend on the very early phase, and try to create products that will match this trend and that your customers will very likely want to purchase. Trends, there are obviously several trends that can happen during a year. Trends can be overlapping, but if you apply this concept on trying to recognize as many trends as possible, as early and as precisely as possible, then I think this can be a very beneficial outcome sales-wise. So To try to answer those two questions, we came up with an opportunity to create. This is not a solution that I have myself available that exists in the market, but this is something that has to be done for every company individually. It's to build an artificial intelligence-based go-to-market platform. And again, this platform will answer those two questions. One, when did the trend start, and what exactly defines this trend? A solution like this would need two components. It would need to organize existing content, so data that is inside the company and outside the company, and it would need to create new content. So to have the AI generate content as a base for designers to create the actual products. Let's look first on how to collect your how to collect and organize your data. You would start with the easy part, which is data that is available inside the company. So you would usually have ERP systems, PLMs, like different systems in which you have data related to your own products and to past sales and to inventories that is relatively easily available. So here what we would suggest is to get as many attributes as possible for products that you brought to market in the past, and also for products that were cancelled, so that designers developed but that maybe were never pushed down to the market. And with attributes, I mean data points that really describe this product, like the color, kind of the category of product, if it has a logo. So like displayed on this slide. And to clean this data as much as possible so that you can really rely on this information. Once you have a clear picture of what is going on internally in the company, then the second piece is to look at the external world. Here you would try to collect data from different platforms. You would try to understand what is going on the side of your competitors, easily by building crawlers that get the data from the e-commerce sites to give a very precise picture on what is trending on for your competitors. You want to understand what people are saying on social media by purchasing data from sentiment data providers, and to get a feeling for like indicational side and inspiration, like the same way that your designers would come up with new ideas of new products. You would want to get this information so that you can feed that information overall to the AI, and that the AI can generate some recommendations for your designers. Once you collect all of this data, internal and external, you would want to organize it in a more structured way possible. So ideally, you would use a platform, like here in this case is our platform, but it could be different BI tools, like Lala mentioned Tableau, for example, to put data in context. So you would want to see how your data relates. Let's say you created this own shirt that is the shirt of your brand. Then you want to see similar products that you created in the past, or which products competitors create that are similar to yours, which trends relate to this. As much data as possible that relates to this product, so that you could improve it and understand how likely it is that this product is going to match the customer's demand for an ongoing trend. If you are thinking how to actually save this data, I would recommend using a graph database, but here in this case, yeah, I think this would exceed the scope of the presentation. Here, like a couple of ideas on how to use an AI to generate new products. Here, a technique called style transfer. If you have detected that this currently in the ongoing trend, this particular color tone and this kind of pattern is part of the trend, then you want to bring this together and generate new product ideas by applying style transfer. And this is a technique that is already implemented in different contexts, but I think bringing that into like supply chain has can easily give inspiration to your own designer. The
Yeah, Florian, can you please switch on your microphone again? I think we've lost you.
Oh, can you hear me again?
Yeah, hi, Florian. Can you hear me?
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, my bad. Somehow
okay.
I was just disconnected.
Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, I'll quickly wrap it up.
Go ahead.
Okay. The second idea that we have spent quite some time working on is feature-based design. So if you have a very clear picture of all the past products that you did in your company, then you could disassemble the components of this product. Like here, this shirt, you would disassemble the arms, the pocket, the collar, the buttons, and store them in such a way that you can allow your designers to generate new designs by clicking them together. This would be quite similar to a video game where you have a character and you will change the hair color, you change the clothes that the character is wearing. If this can be done very like fast and efficiently, this I believe would be a high value for designers to create a final product. And the last point here I'd like to make is about content scoring. Once you know what the current trends or the ongoing trend that you want to build a product for is defined for, you would want to understand how likely it is that the products that you created yourself are that they are matching this trend, so that they are likely going to become popular. And here, this would involve a set of AI models, but the idea is to highlight on the picture itself which parts of the product are the ones that would become popular. Here, for example, this dress overall, it's a popular product which has a popularity score of 86%. But then we'll see that the way the arm is cut, that doesn't seem to match very well the trend. So if this is improved, then overall it's possible that it's likely that the product will become more appealing to end customers. That's basically all on my side. Just a few takeaways. It's really important to keep to cleanse your data and to have your data organized in a way that you can actually use it for building more advanced analytics. I believe that in future, the winners, like the brands that will win, are the ones that can recognize trends very early and go to market quickly. So with very short lead times, that can benefit on the trend and therefore have high sales with minimal risk to it. And I think it's a good time to start with different AI projects, even though those are risky projects and there's a high chance that these will fail, but at least those learnings are important for moving forward. Yeah, so thanks for having me. And if you have more technical detailed questions, feel free to reach out later.
Okay, thank you very much, Florian. So we will take again questions after the next session. If you have any question for any of the speakers, you can go ahead and make use of the Q&A tab, and then we'll take again all those questions as a group towards the end of the webinar. I would like to bring on our next speaker, Ken Oy. Ken, if you could unmute yourself, and welcome, Ken. Go ahead, I'm loading your presentation. Ken, are you with us?
Hello?
Ken, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's all good. It's working now. Go ahead. Welcome, Ken. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Max. So I'm Ken. I'm from TenderBoard, over in coming to you from Singapore. Today, we're going to share a little bit about what we do to help organizations move into a cloud procurement environment. And the slides that we have kind of cover the ideas that we have been practicing. So if you're also considering some sort of digital transformation, hopefully this would be helpful to you. The way that I'm going to cover in my presentation is, let me just see if I can get this to work. So what I'm going to do is why cloud. So we're going to talk about exactly what cloud procurement is, why now is a good time to think about going into the cloud. Of course, we'll talk a little bit to provide a balanced view we're going to talk a little bit about what are the challenges in store when you think about cloud. So these two slides are kind of targeted at very general applications of procurement systems, but we try to bring some of the lessons that we have personally learned in our deployments to add flavor to them, and then we end off with a case study. Okay, so some background just to give you a sense of where we come from, because a lot of this is going to be flavored with our own experience. We are an online e-procurement system, and we also operate a marketplace. Our software is delivered multi-tenanted software as a service. It's mainly focused on indirect purchasing as opposed to supply chain management or direct purchasing. We do cover the entire source to settle for indirect purchasing, and we tend to target customers who are medium sized. So let's say about 300 to 1,000 employees, and they tend to be very paper based before using us, and then we help them to transform to a digital process. So that's kind of just one slide about what TenderBoard is. The rest is going to be more on procurement at a high level. Okay, so I think we saw a slide very similar to this in the earlier presentation. Procurement is a very process-driven function in any organization, and I think what is interesting to just know is that these processes are they're not good or bad in themselves. I mean, they're there for a reason, to provide check and balances. The main problem today is that many people are doing this on pen and paper. It's surprising how big an organization can grow and can scale to and still use pen and paper to solve many of their operational processes. But this is what we've seen, and there are huge savings that are that can be reaped just by sort of transferring many of these pen and paper manual processes into a digital automated environment. One of the best ways we put forth to do this is by using cloud environment. And now there are many different kinds of e-procurement system. For us, we're focused on cloud e-procurement, and there are several reasons that are commonly thrown around for cloud procurement and why cloud it works. Here are sort of three. The first one is obviously cost. Just by going on the cloud, you don't have to you don't have to take on the burden of infrastructure. Speed to deployment is typically faster, and of course, part of why cloud is also important is that a lot of the development is already done. A lot of the system updates and maintenance is all taken care of for you. So these are kind of like the very common reasons why cloud is thrown around for any kind of system. But I think for procurement systems, cloud actually provides a couple of other benefits that may not have been so obvious initially. The first one is that there's a real network effect for procurement systems. I mean, for us, when for many of the systems that are built for enterprises, they tend to be very inward facing. Procurement is one of those where it is also external facing. You kind of need both suppliers and the buyers and the users themselves to interact on the platform. But what this means as well is that not only are you exposed to a larger set of suppliers, the fact is, being cloud procurement, you can sort of benchmark across buying organizations as well. And that's one of the benefits that kind of popped up when we saw that different buyers were doing different things, but they were targeting the similar kinds of metrics. So being on the cloud makes it a lot easier to, number one, sort of benchmark yourself across buying organizations, but also it makes it a lot easier to work with suppliers when they're all on a single network. So we call this a network effect from organizations and data. The second benefit for cloud is that it allows for very easy integration. There are many systems today that are built cloud first, cloud native, and I think this offers a much greater choice to businesses on how they want to go about their digitalization journey. So we have here just a simple concept of how being on the cloud allows you to mesh together different systems together, and this is important. We see in recent years that enterprise cloud software has become very popular, and it happens in all different functions of an organization. It started out, of course, with the infrastructure like Amazon and Azure, but later on, now companies can manage a lot of their ticketing and their support system through pretty good software online like Zendesk. There are many communication tools online available for through a cloud service. Accounting systems as well. There are many accounting systems out there that are now cloud native. And what this means is that businesses, as they grow today, when they decide to digitalize one of their functions and put it on the cloud, they don't have to think of it as a suite of software, right? It's not like if you are choosing a big software suite, the moment you decide, oh, I only need the accounting system for this software suite, it kind of ties you down to the other functions. So it's very hard for businesses to now digitalize other functions and choose other kinds of software. But with cloud technology and how the industry is going, it takes away some of these considerations, making it easier for businesses as they grow, as they scale. As and when it makes sense to digitalize a function, they can do so almost independently of the next function. So for example, as the organization is growing, they may want to digitalize accounting first. They can choose whatever software they want. And the next thing that they digitalize is HR and then maybe procurement. And they could make these decisions almost independently of each other. So I think that's where this concept of cloud kind of really helps, especially for procurement, because procurement tends to be not the first thing that organizations want to digitalize, right? They tend to digitalize accounting first, and then something else, and something else, and then they swing back to whatever else is left, and then procurement tends to be the third or the fourth thing that third or fourth function that businesses digitalize. So now makes it a lot easier to do this. It makes it a lot easier to think about mashing best of breed, best of class systems together, and most cloud systems are already kind of play friendly with one another. Making it easy for you to integrate across systems and easily across functions in your organization. Another reason why I think it's kind of makes it easy to go onto cloud today is that there is a growing sense of familiarity with online systems. Most people understand what cloud means. Most people understand what software as a service means, and many of the staff, many of the users in your own organization are becoming, they're sort of the younger guys. They're more tech savvy. They are so-called mobile native. They grew up with web and internet technologies. So it makes it easier to adopt some of these systems. Plus the fact that many countries today are sort of also pushing forth this productivity thing. In Singapore, at least, the government is pushing very hard for businesses to adopt technology, adopt online services. So it makes all this change management a little easier. It doesn't mean it's easy, but at least it's a lot easier to now move into this cloud transformation. Now, I'm just going to touch a little bit about the challenges of cloud. The one that we see that is pretty specific to procurement is configuration. Even though many organizations can exist on a single platform, the challenge with procurement systems is that it's process driven, and every organization's process is different. So there isn't really a one size fits all. Rather the platform needs to abstract a lot of the configuration layer to make it such that one platform can serve many different organizations. And the key is in choosing a platform that understands what is let's say critical for procurement, and what else is not so critical, so that they can build that as pure infrastructure. So for us, what we have realized is there are really only three things that are kind of very critical for procurement. The first is that your forms needs to be highly configurable. Everyone has their own forms. Everyone has their own flows. That's the second thing. And of course, how to get the data back out is also quite personal to each organization. So these are the three things, and that where highly configurable, flexible systems are required in an e-procurement system. But having said that, even though we've identified this, it's not that straightforward, because sometimes, even on the form, we kind of fix certain things, certain nomenclature, certain terms, and we find that it's really hard once you start serving a lot of users. What works for some users may not work for others. So, for example, for us, we have an approval system, and one of the simple things that we put there is you're able to reject or you're able to approve, and we have half of our buyers up in arms about the way that we use the word approve, and reject. Some of them like the word reject. Some of them think it's too strong, it's too heavy-handed, and that we shouldn't say it is reject, should be sent back, something like this. So even though it's very fast to deploy, one of the biggest challenges with cloud is configuration management, and the fact that some of the infrastructure is shared, and that you don't have full control as a customer to sort of configure it exactly the way you want. So having to make sure that it captures most of your requirements, and then for those things that you can live with, you need to be prepared that it may always be there. Then there's one more challenge that we see, which is one of the big so-called benefits of cloud that people push about is that, look, we take care of the system maintenance for you. As the system is upgraded, you always have this ability to get more features, so you improve, your bang for the buck improves as the system grows. But actually what we have learned is in procurement, because everything is process driven, even though new features come online, it doesn't mean that customers want it. In fact, some customers would say they'd rather not have it, and they'd rather you keep the system as is without changing anything. And that's one of the challenges that we have. As a system, we always push for new features to improve things, even if it's just improving the UI, because it's been proven to improve the flow. Some users would feel like, hey, you know what, this is not what we signed up for. We actually prefer it to be the old way, and we have less features. We have no changes, so that we don't have to go through this change management again with our staff. So even though SaaS is great in some ways, some of its strengths actually turn out to be bugbears for users as well. So I think ultimately, the question that we face is, although SaaS is ready to sort of take over e-procurement onto the cloud, the question is whether organizations are fully ready for it. I think this is a challenge that we see for at least procurement systems, where the procurement organization or the finance organization tends to, they may not have people who are very tech savvy and who may not understand online systems as well. They are process owners, but they may not be able to own the technology stack that comes with the system. So they often pull in IT departments to manage and run the system. The only problem with that is IT is not system, they're not trained in procurement or finance, so they don't understand some of the considerations that go into managing the system from the finance or procurement perspective. So I think one of the big things that we've seen is that, a lot of the finance and procurement organizations we work with have started to really ask themselves what kind of talent they need within their own organizations, where as they make this transformation into the digital space, into a digital and online system, some of our customers are starting to say, hey, when we hire people, we need to make sure that they are so-called future ready. They come digitally savvy, or at least we are able to train them and make sure that they are able to operate in the future where procurement and finance is sort of in the digital space. Okay, so I think with that, I will move very quickly, just a couple more slides for me to share about some of the case studies. One case study that we've done, in this case, it's a buyer, it's an organization with about maybe 550 staff, of which 180, 200 of them are involved in procurement. They have about 40 million annual spend across about 200 to 250 purchases. Now, before they started using us, it was all pen and paper and emails, but they had a few things that they really needed to achieve that they were failing at. The first was they have a very strong corporate governance requirement. They needed to know how every dollar was spent. They needed to know that every purchase was properly approved, and it was getting very hard to do it as their organization grew. They grew something like 200 people in 1 year, and this explosion of purchasing as they were building up their infrastructure caused a lot of problems in their audit. So strong corporate governance requirements became one of the key things to push them to look for a procurement system that allowed them to track all these purchases better. The second issue that they had was productivity. They wanted to grow fast, but they didn't want to scale and have to grow the number of people exponentially just to support the paperwork. And then the third thing that they were looking for was whether they could expose themselves to more suppliers, at least for the commoditized items, whether they could expose themselves to more suppliers so that They didn't just rotate their purchases within the few suppliers that they already had. So these were some of the issues that was faced. And what we did was, I think we took about, so let me cover the implementation first. We learned a few things while implementing for this particular customer that we think would make it, that would be clear success factors when we want to roll out any e-procurement system. The first is there needs to be obvious, strong management backing to say, hey, you know what, going digital, going online is the way forward. And they do that by identifying a clear champion that reports directly to them and empowering that person to say, look, you can make the decisions. You have a team under you to really see this through. And in every case in every deployment where we didn't have this clear champion identified, or if the clear champion leaves, our progress has always floundered. So having strong management backing in the form of a clear champion that reports to them with a team under them makes a lot of difference. The other thing that we saw was important is for this champion to be part of the procurement team, to come from procurement or to come from finance, so that they understood the system process. There's something that this particular champion did very differently from the rest was she actually sought a lot of user feedback to the point of organizing almost like town hall sessions where there were 50 people, 60 people coming in to drive requirements. And at first we were really worried about this, to have so many people exposed to the design process of the system. But it turned out great because it was her way of doing so-called change management and selling down to the users within the organization as well. IT was involved, but only from a security perspective and ensuring that everything played well within their IT governance requirements. And the last one that is really important is the champion identified coaches and they took ownership over rolling out the system, being the first level of support to their own users, so that they, if anything happens in the first few months or after that, they were able to handle it internally, and rather than always throwing it back to our own support team to help their users. The results were that we launched within 4 months of award. We conducted only about 4 training sessions to cover the 200 people, and about 500 suppliers were onboarded. Some of the savings that we saw, their turnaround time for procurement went down about, so we saved about 40%, and there were some manpower savings. We went from 5 full-time executives to 4, and the ROI on year 1 ROI is estimated to be about 100%. Okay, so I think that's kind of all I have from us. I'm more than happy to take any questions, and I guess back to you, Max.
Attendees, which we've been pushing back to the Q&A section. I would like to start maybe with you and Arup about a question about, can procurement system be implemented entirely as cloud services today? Is it possible to actually run all those procurement online? Maybe you want to start, Ken, and Arup can also comment on this.
Okay, so this is a really good challenge. Question. I think we have seen from our own experience that it is very hard to go completely digital, even with those with the strongest will to do so. There are parts of procurement that are kind of hard to go digital, but these parts that are difficult are nothing to do with the internal processes. From an internal process perspective, from source to settle, we have managed to go 100% digital, 100% on cloud for several of our customers. But procurement itself tends to, because it happens in the real world, there are some times where either a supplier isn't able to go online, or they just don't do online submissions for you. So we have seen that there's still some times where number one, either supplier doesn't play ball, or the dynamics of the industry doesn't afford the supplier to come online to serve you, or real world things are still needed, whether you need documentation like drawings and hard copy and samples to be submitted, that force an offline interaction. So I think from a process perspective, it is fully feasible to go 100% online, but there are some parts of the actual interactions that still require some sort of manual process.
So you think that suppliers are a potential problem, right? I mean, when you're trying to implement internally, it's fine, even with a strong will and drive and top CEO approval. But the integration with suppliers can always be the issue.
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially when you're talking about suppliers that you either have, let's say, less negotiating power with, or that suppliers industry doesn't typically go online to serve customers, for example, grocery stores, or you just have to buy very small value products, and then you simply have no sort of negotiating power with them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Arup, can you share your views on this? What's your opinion?
So in a nutshell, if I look at it, any system implementation, any new technology rollout will typically encounter three points. One is your people, one is your technology, and one is your processes. The cloud as a technology is definitely well adapted. It can take over the entire function as it is, but at the same time, the people are the main concerns. Like Ken also pointed out, it's how do you get your external suppliers to play ball with you and start engaging with you from an external environment through the cloud environment. So that is definitely a challenge. Now, as the maturity of the industry goes higher, I think it's also driven from two aspects. One is that how your competitors are adapting to it. So from a supplier point of view, from the procurement team, if they launch a cloud system, and if one supplier is more attuned to the cloud environment and can deal with it, it's easier for them. But when it comes to some suppliers who are not comfortable with it, they'll start lagging behind and they'll start losing business. So it's your competition then pushing you to start adapting to cloud. The other area is that with the new generation or the next generation of people coming into the workforce, they are a little more digital savvy, and hence they will push their own respective organizations to get adaptable to this cloud or any other form of digital technologies within their footprint. So I think within a span of 5 to 10 years, I think cloud is going to be a normal thing to have. Like 20 years ago, people didn't even have desktop machines, and most of these, it's like a need to have. It's a mandatory thing. The same thing is going to happen with cloud.
Okay, thank you very much, Arup. Okay, again, if you have any other questions, feel free to put them into the Q&A section, and we'll take them as it goes. A quick question for you, Florian, about AI and machine learning. How fast do you think those technology will replace traditional procurement functions? We can start with you, Florian, and maybe Ken and Arup can also comment on this. Florian, go ahead. Make sure to unmute your microphone. Okay, maybe we can start with you, Ken and Arup, about AI. I mean, are you guys using already in the platform this kind of technology?
Okay, so this is Ken. Although we don't market ourselves as an AI company, we do, have some things that we're experimenting with to help, especially with the sourcing. I think the challenge always is trying to find an application that lends itself to the technology, so that we're not doing AI for the sake of AI, but really that it can derive value, and can that value be delivered in a simpler way rather than AI, whether it's just statistical or some sort of algorithm that we can write to provide that same value. Then we tend to have a preference to do things in a simpler way. But having said that, I think the fact is that the capabilities of AI are getting quite scary, or rather I should say, pretty convincing that they could soon take over many of the things that that you think were not able to be done by a computer once. Yeah, so I think we are sort of staying on the fringe on this. We don't have we don't market ourselves as AI, and although we're experimenting, I think it will take a little while to sort of prove its case out within procurement. But there are certain things, there are certain areas that seem to lend themselves towards this, whether it's classification or some sort of help procurement service assistant, like delivered through a chat bot kind of a service, or maybe even with sourcing in terms of identifying suppliers and recognizing, keeping up with their performance and recognizing when your supply chains could be at risk. So we have sort of seen like some potential applications, but I think it will take a little while more before we see something mainstream.
Okay, Arup, where do you feel that those new technology like AI or machine learning will fit into those procurement process or solution? Arup? Oh, Florian, I think you're back now.
Yes, sorry, I had some connection issues. Can you just repeat the question?
Yeah, so we're discussing where how fast you think new technology like AI or machine learning will replace the traditional procurement function. So I've just talked to Ken about how he's going to use it with his platform, but what's your view on this? I mean, and where do you see those AI machine learning starting inside the procurement process?
I think there will be a big impact on automating tasks that are very repetitive. Like, for example, an initiative we worked on recently with raw material procurement team. They have to interact a lot with like tier ones and tier twos to review potential quality and delivery issues. And these the teams that do the actual work, that are communicating with the vendors and that are like collecting data, making decisions like related to orders, are really doing the whole day very similar tasks that are like about collecting files, like putting data together, generating some reports at the aggregate level, and then making decisions based on that. So I think this kind of processes will be the first ones to be automated. Like currently, we see a lot of vendor collaboration platforms where different vendors are asked to like connect to and upload their data. But if a company works with like hundreds of different vendors, then I think this onboarding process is very, very time consuming. These kind of projects tend to be very expensive. So using AI as an alternative to have these huge platforms for like gathering the data in different formats from different vendors and bringing that together and processing like all these small manual steps that would usually be done by the sourcing teams. This is, I think, on the short term, the first component that will be replaced.
Arup, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, sorry. Okay, we got cut off. There was I think this is what's happening sometimes on those webinar platforms. So I was asking a question to you, Ken, about whether you feel that big ERPs could be a potential problem when companies are implementing cloud-based procurement system. Um, Question for you, Ken or Arup. Do you see it as a challenge?
I think that of course there are many big players that we are mindful of, but at the same time, I think that e-procurement systems, or they are, it is a fairly mature industry in the sense that it's been around for a long time. And frankly, if big players wanted to, they could have gotten a really good head start in building out a cloud first kind of a strategy to approach their existing users, and maybe the wider market at that. But I think this is a challenge that will exist for big companies. I think it is really hard to identify new markets, new ways of delivering service, and going after new customers versus the existing customers. We know that for any organization to make a change, if they are already in an e-procurement system that is not cloud, that is, let's say, on-premise, for them to now want to go to cloud, they're going to measure whether that ROI makes sense for them, and they won't have the benefit of saying, oh, it's a productivity play. It saves you a lot of effort because they already are everything on, let's say, digital and automated. And I think that's why the message that we are bringing, at least to the value propositions that we are so-called proposing, tend to resonate a lot more with people who aren't on any form of digital system today. So they are not using a digital procurement platform. Some of them are already using big boy solutions as ERP solutions, but they aren't using the procurement modules from those players. Like, let's say, SAP. We actually have several of our customers where we are integrated into SAP, and they've been using SAP for the longest time. It's just that they didn't turn on the procurement module. So I think for the bigger ERP solutions, they obviously could still be, they could move into this so-called cloud native space, but I think it is going to be a little bit challenging for them to try and do this now, just because they have a lot of existing customers who aren't using that already.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Arup, do you share those views? Arup, are you here with us? Okay, looks like we have some technical issue today with the platform. This is what's happening when you're running a webinar across Asia, but that's okay, it's part of the game. I just want to finish up. I'm not sure we're still online. Florian, are you still online?
Yes, I'm still online.
Okay, Arup, are you online? No, it looks like Arup looks like he's online, but he's not hearing us. Just to finish up, at the end, what type of companies do you think in Asia will benefit from digital procurement system? If you could share, your opinions. Do you have, Ken, for example, an ideal profile of companies in terms of size, number of suppliers, industry maybe? What do you think? Which company are the most suitable for that?
I think the most suitable, I think it comes from a need perspective. So for us, even when we are looking at the market and how to penetrate, I think we try to figure out who has the most pain, and especially if they're doing things pen and paper. So the more procurement they do, the more transactions they do per year, and if all of them are done pen and paper, manual process, the more pain they will feel. So there are some industries that don't lend very well to this. For example, if you're a consulting firm and maybe you are very asset light. You hardly buy anything. You sell services. Legal firms, they tend to not buy too many things, and therefore we wouldn't regard them as, let's say, high potential targets. But there are many other organizations where many types of industries where they do a lot of buying, whether it's oil and gas, or whether it's marine, education, construction. Buying things is part and parcel of their operations, and therefore they not only feel pain, they also are incentivized to sort of help make these things more productive. Those industries that I mentioned, they also tend to be industries that many younger folks don't consider as sexy. So manpower, they also have labor shortage and manpower concerns. So it's very high on their list to say, hey, you know what, we really need to move forward, digitalize, reducing manpower and as well as improving productivity at the same time. So those are the kind of so-called the characteristics we look for, I think, in terms of adoption of such technologies.
Okay, Florian, do you think there is also a best fit profile for companies to start digital procurement in Asia?
Yes, I think across industries, like smaller companies would be more flexible to start with more like innovative, more cloud-based procurement solution. Like larger companies, like larger brands, or already have systems in place that were implemented. I mean, from what I've seen last decade or maybe even 2 decades ago. So it's quite hard for them to make like major process changes, even though it would end up making the process faster and easier to manage. This change from existing old system to something more modern, like the solution that Ken was introducing. Yeah, I think the smaller, the easier the changes. But if a company is bigger, it would benefit more on the longer term. But the effort to get there is larger.
Thank you, Florian. Okay, Arup, are you still with us? Would you like to share your opinion on this? Now it looks like Arup is disconnected. Okay, so no problem. Thank you very much. And again, I want to apologize with the technical issues that we faced today. But that's again the nature of running webinars in Asia today across multiple countries, including China. So thank you very much, Florian, Ken, and Arup for sharing your insights. And as I mentioned earlier, you will get from us a feedback request. So give us your feedback on what you've seen and heard today. And again, if you are interested in attending our events, either in-person physical events in different cities or online, you can check out our website. So thank you again. Thank you, Arup. Thank you, Ken, and thank you, Florian. Wish you a great day. And maybe some of you are on holidays across Asia. Some of them are working. And we look forward to see you next time. Thank you. I will see you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.